Welcome back, everyone. It's the Line Movers, and it's week 7 of the NFL. I'm back, and I'm joined with Zach Scarborough and Nick Lee. Nick from the Iowa Wise Guys podcast, and Zach from Houston, Texas, also heard on Jimmy Ott's radio, ESPN radio of Baton Rouge. Okay, guys, this week in the NFL, short list, kind of a wild schedule, a lot of big spreads. We're not going to talk about many of those. We're going to talk about bankroll management as our topic of discussion. Move right on into 3 games this week, and then we're going to close it out with maybe some in-pocket plays or some player prop notes. From there, we'll move on to week 8 next week, and then we'll keep it rolling for the rest of the season for you guys. You can always give us a follow on Twitter. Our website is up and running. It's thelinemovers.net. You can go check it out. You can sign up. Entry-level plan will just get you in our emails and all, and then everything else will give you access to our videos when they come out and things of that nature. So go ahead, sign up. You can give us a follow, and then you can also listen to Nick on the Iowa Wise Guys podcast if you want to hear more of him. So let's get into this week's action. Bankroll management. Nick, I'm going to let you start off, and I'm going to let you go ahead and give everyone an insight on maybe how you started building your bankroll, maybe a long time ago, whenever you first started gambling, or how you best like to manage it to make sure that you're not overindulging or chasing or doing anything that you shouldn't be doing when it comes to sports gambling.
Sure. So I think initially when you get started, I think you need to pick a certain amount of money, whether that's $1,000, for rough math, but or easy math, something that you're comfortable with putting away is that you're starting bankroll, and a rule of thumb is, a lot of people will use 1% of your bankroll as your 1 unit play and get that started. That's kind of the rule of thumb to get moving, and you can kind of establish your baseline there as far as your 1 unit play. And as your bankroll grows, hopefully your unit size will grow. And if your bankroll unfortunately would shrink, your unit size could shrink. I'm not talking about daily, but over the course of time, you might be moving your 1 unit plays. Hopefully your 1 unit plays 10 years into gambling is not what your 1 unit play would be when you first initially start. So I think for easy beginners, something easy would be find something you're comfortable with, and then 1% of your bankroll would be your 1 unit play.
Yeah, I agree with that. A big thing for me, and I think a lot of people starting out gambling, is sticking to those units, because as we start winning and gaining confidence, and then we see something we really like, and we put, what would be 4 or 5 units on it, and you lose, and you've lost, all that success that you've had prior to that, and you're back at square zero, back at zero. So I think it's important to really stick to those units, and not get out of hand.
Yeah, don't chase things, as well. The flip side of that is too, I lost yesterday. Well, I'm going to double up today and play these for a couple more units. This is a marathon, not a sprint. If you're in the sports gambling for the long haul, this is definitely the type of strategy you want to use. You don't want to be chasing, or like Zach said, once you start winning, don't get overconfident and start placing 4 or 5 unit wagers. Truthfully, if you're maybe a couple times a year, you'd have a couple plays where you're, betting 2, 3, 4 units. It's not very common.
Yeah. So I guess things I would avoid when it comes to bankroll management, now that it becomes legal basically everywhere, I'd avoid trying to play on credit as much as possible. I know that some people, it's impossible to do that where you're located, but not betting on credit is a good thing because you're not in the hole before you even lose, theoretically. I would also keep in mind that when you're gambling and trying to build a bankroll, 1% or 2% would be your natural 1 unit play. So whatever it is, if you want to do it long term, don't look at it as something that's going to pay your bills or something that's going to like initially like solve a cause that's wrong in your life. I would look at it as leisure, something for fun. There's people probably like us or more in depth even than us that do it more for a living than what we do. I probably out of the three of us, I probably do it more often than us. But with that being said, I just think it's important to never go in over your head. And that's something that I want to emphasize with a credit bookie. It's always easy to get in over your head with a credit bookie because you're not really putting money up out of your pocket right away. So the more you have to give out right away is also something that's kind of why people don't like to play the futures market, is because they don't like to put the money up for a long period of time. And that's kind of why they go to a credit bookie as well, so they can get down on the futures market without having to put the money up. But my advice would be to find something you're comfortable with, find a sport that best suits you. Don't think that you know everything about every sport, because that's never true. There's always someone that's better than you. If they're not better than you, they have different angles than you, and they can give you point of view or advice that you don't know or wouldn't have thought of for a certain game. And you don't ever need to compare your bankroll to the next guy's bankroll, because that's not very important. As long as you're having fun gambling, a $10 wager is just as fun as a $100 wager to the next guy and the next guy. So just keep that in mind when you're gambling, guys, that bankroll management is key, and there's always tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And unless we go through another pandemic, we are going to have sports on the next day and the next day and the next day. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at your bankroll and you want to make a play. So without any further ado, any more talk, we're going to get right into this week's games, and then we'll give you a little insight into player prop market and send you on your way. So this week, Thursday night football, first game of the week, we're going to talk about the Browns and the Broncos. Broncos are visiting the Browns. Spread opened up at Browns -6. It's now -2, down to 41 from 44. Two quarterbacks that are kind of taking a beating this year. Baker Mayfield's got the separated shoulder. Teddy Bridgewater was out with a concussion, took a beating last week against Oakland. So what do we got going on here, Zach? What do you like? Where are you headed?
Yeah, this is tough. I mean, earlier today, as soon as I saw Baker Mayfield, Chubb, and Hunt all out, Odell Beckham maybe not playing either, I got in at 3.5 on the Broncos. It's now what you said at 2. I don't know here. I really liked the over in this game until I heard all that news. I held off because you can't really bet when one team has 20 players on the injured list to start the week. Also a Thursday night game, so shortened week. I don't know. I don't have a lot on this game. Both teams have kind of been struggling. I think the Broncos have lost their last 3 in a row. Neither defense has been playing great, both giving up a lot of points. But we got to lean here to the Broncos. I think Teddy Bridgewater's 23-4 against the spread on the road in his career. We can't, look away from that. Plus, the Browns are just missing too many players here. Don't know if I like it at under 3, but it's just going to keep dropping, it looks like. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Zach. I think that with the news, I also jumped on the Browns. I did not get 3.5. I got them at 3. I think if it's under 3, maybe look at playing the Broncos money line here. Teddy Bridgewater, ATS machine, coverage machine as a quarterback. I think that the Broncos and Browns defense both, Zach mentioned, they're both struggling here. That Browns offense, what can they do against the Broncos defense with their 3 main offensive weapons out and possibly Odell Beckham? I lean the Broncos here as well. And I think if it's under 3 and you like the Broncos, maybe take them on a money line play. If it gets to 3.5, if you got that out there, take the Broncos ATS.
Yeah, I think for this game, Baker's in a tough spot. Kareem Hunt just went down with the calf injury. Chubb might be coming back, but he'll be coming back off an injury. So if he comes back, obviously he's not going to be fully healthy, and it's a short week of rest, so he might not even play.
I think they already listed him as out.
Okay, so that lists you without your two best running backs, who are starters on any other team in the league as well. So I think this is a Denver game. Any way you look at it, Baker's going to be forced to throw the ball. The cornerbacks for Denver have been getting eaten alive. They're going to need to make a statement. Who better to make a statement than against a guy that's prone to turn the ball over? So it's
going to be Case Keenum.
Casey Keenum's. Yeah,
Baker's
Baker's out.
On the field. Yep.
Yeah, so Keenum can move the ball down the field. He's efficient, but he can turn the ball over as well too. That's always been the knock on him, and he doesn't stretch the ball down the field. So with Keenum playing, you can bring the defense up in the box. That's always was his knock in Minnesota. So I kind of like the Broncos in that game too. Definitely. It's a better spot for the Broncos in my opinion than what it is for the Browns dealing with all the injuries. 1 p.m. Sunday. Chiefs, Titans. Chiefs are high flying offense. They're kind of all over the place. Defense looks bad, then it looks good. It looks good for like a half sometimes. It looks awful sometimes as well. Titans, big win on Monday Night Football over the Bills. A lot of chatter on Twitter about the 4th and 1 decision for Josh Allen. Either way, you could kick the field goal or you can lose in overtime. You can win in overtime. You never know, and we will never know. The game is over with. So this week, Titans, Chiefs minus 5.5. Spread is total is 57.5. Nick, what do you got?
Yeah, this definitely throws a little wrench in what my initial thoughts on this game were going to be. Tennessee looked pretty good on offense Monday night against a darn good defense. I think this is going to be a really tight game. I would have to lean Tennessee here. I think that when you look at the game that Tennessee played against the Chiefs, we just saw Buffalo play the Chiefs, and I think that Tennessee will be able to move the ball on that Chiefs defense. If they can move the ball on the Bills defense, I don't know why they wouldn't be able to move the ball on the Chiefs defense. I think Tennessee moves the ball. I think it's going to be a close game. I think the Chiefs squeak out a victory on the road, but I think 5.5 is too much. I'll lean Tennessee.
I agree with what Nick said here. I think that the Titans were able to run the ball all over a good Bills defense, and Kansas City's run defense has not been good all year. It's hard to bet against. I mean, this is a must-win game for the Chiefs, kind of. I mean, they keep putting themselves in must-win games, and their offense is going to move the ball. The Bills move the ball great against the Titans. They don't have a very good defense. I was initially leaning to this over, but it's at 57. That's kind of just too high for me to take an NFL over at. But yes, I do think this line has creeped up a little too much. Tennessee scored on their last 6 consecutive drives for Buffalo. They should be able to score. Kansas City, is going to score. If Kansas City can stop turning the ball over, I would say they can cover this line. I think that they can outscore the Titans, but I mean, they have 8 interceptions and 4 fumbles, and they turned it over 3 times at the beginning of the game last week. Came out after half, played a clean game. Defense played great. So I don't know. Tough game to cap. Will be an exciting game to watch. 2 good football teams. Chiefs need to win. I also lean the Titans in the points right now.
Yeah, I kind of specifically lean Titans getting 5.5 because of the line movement. Vegas knows what they're doing when they set it at 3, and this has a game. It has it written all over it where it could be a field goal game, last score wins type of thing. So getting 5.5 at this point, I think with Tennessee at home getting 5.5, that's over the touchdown, or that's over the field goal, and that's through the 4. So you don't have to really worry about any of those numbers there. 5.5 is not a key number. If you want to go through the touchdown, you can always tease it, but I don't think you really need to. I think this game ends in a field goal, or the Titans just win outright. Keep in mind, it is at home, and they just beat the Bills, and the Bills just beat Kansas City by 18. So it goes a long way. I know that really never means much because it's always the opponent in front of you, and you often see that times where one team beats another who beats that team. So it happens a lot in sports. So that doesn't really mean much for handicapping a game. But Derrick Henry was impressive, and the wide receivers are coming back slowly for Tennessee. So it's getting harder and harder to put guys in the box. And the Titans are getting what they wanted on offense now that they have everybody healthy. You have to keep an eye on that injury to Taylor Lewan, though. So moving on, 1 p.m., Bengals, Ravens, AFC North game of the week. We got 6.5 points for the Bengals and over under of 47. This is going to be a great game. Ravens coming off an absolute dominant performance versus the Chargers. They turned Justin Herbert over. They stopped him on 4th down. They ran the ball. They did everything they needed to do in that game. Nick, what do you got here? This is a great game. You think the Bengals can hang with the Ravens?
Well, as a lifelong Bengals fan, I have my insecurities when it comes to playing the Baltimore Ravens. But I think when you look at this game purely as a handicapper, I think this is going to be a very tight game. I think maybe a field goal either way. I do think Cincinnati is much improved. And Baltimore is one of those teams that's also hard to figure out. One week they play well, they dominate the Chargers, and one week they're kicking a record-breaking field goal to beat the Lions. So it's the NFL. I think a division game here. I think they both know each other well. I'll take Cincinnati getting those points in a division rivalry.
Yeah, this isn't the Bengals team that we're used to, that the Ravens have dominated for years. I mean, Lamar Jackson has been playing out of his mind. They got their running game going really, pretty good last week. I think they almost had 200 yards rushing. I think the biggest problem with the Bengals are the Ravens going to be able to get pressure in the pocket? I think the Bengals have looked great, but they haven't really played a lot of great teams. And the teams that could get a pass rush against them, they've struggled throwing the ball. So, I mean, if the Ravens can look what they did to the Chargers, who, have one of the best offenses in the NFL. I mean, they got a lot of pressure. They played really well. I mean, they gave up 6 points that whole game to Herbert and that Chargers offense. So can they do that 2 weeks in a row? I don't know. This is a big game. Whoever wins will be leading the division, I believe, right?
That's correct.
So definitely, if you're going to give me 6.5 points, maybe this is one of those opportunities where if it's sitting at 6.5, you can always buy it to the 7 to get that key number, or you can tease it down to 0.5 point. So those are 2 options there. But if you're going to give me 6.5 points in a game like this, I think you have to take it with the way the Bengals can score, and they do have a great receiving core, and Jamar Chase has been awesome paired with Joe Burrow. So I think they played at LSU together. So and they've been on fire.
I think this game comes down to quarterback play. Obviously, Lamar Jackson's been throwing the ball well. He did it last week, even though he turned the ball over. He still threw it well. Does that continue? Can Cincinnati get a pass rush? What happens there? This game's at 6.5. I think you probably sit around and wait for a 7. And maybe once you get to 7, you buy the half and get to a 7.5, and then play Cincinnati. But I wouldn't play the 6.5 just in case it comes down to a last touchdown wins type of thing. I have more faith in Baltimore than I do Cincinnati right now. But I think it's going to be a great game, and I think for the Sunday slate, all the great games are at 1:00. So I'll probably take the over in that game because I think it's too low for the way that these teams can produce points and the way that Baltimore can score so fast. I know they get started slow, but they have a tendency to score a lot of points quick. And if the Bengals get behind, they're going to be throwing the ball long. So they got a bunch of receivers that can stretch the field. I like the over, and it's at 47 right now. So you don't often see games getting this low in the NFL, and they've kind of definitely come back from the early numbers in the 50s earlier in the year. I'll take the over 47. So that's it for the featured games, guys. We're gonna touch on player props real quick, why we play them and the market. It's a tough market. You have to be kind of quick. It's kind of like if you're familiar with the stock market, you got to react fast. Things move quickly. You can get a player prop yardage. For instance, we got Zach Moss Monday night over 13 and a half receiving yards. He finished with 15 and a half. I think the prop ended up going off at like 15 and a half or 16 and a half. So if you don't act fast enough, you can't get in some of these props. For instance, last night, the James Harden prop in the NBA, it was 8.5 assists. He sat for the fourth quarter. That prop was bet all the way up to 10.5 assists. I saw people betting on it all night long, all the way up to 10.5 assists. Chances are he plays some of the fourth quarter, a little more of the fourth quarter. He gets one more assist, maybe two, finishes with 9 or 10. A lot of people would have been losers because they didn't get ahead of the market there. But everybody ended up being a loser last night. That's the thing with the prop market. You got to get ahead of it. You got to be quick. You got to make sure you're reacting on the right numbers. If you see a number and then you check back and it's a couple yards higher, I'd be cautious. But then there's also times where, I was in Iowa, we played the Robert Woods prop and Robert Woods blew it out in the first quarter. He had like 60 some yards in the first quarter and his number was 57. So there's times that you're going to beat these props by a ton. I think Kyle Pitts beat his yardage prop like a couple weeks ago against the Jets by like 110 yards. So theoretically, you got to get on them early, though, so you can get the best number. Same thing with opening lines in basketball and most sports. Like the Denver scenario, you could have got 6 earlier in the week instead of 2, or so vice versa. Just make sure when you're looking at the player prop market, always search for the best line. You got multiple websites available to you, so don't pay minus 120 when you can pay minus 110. And then prop markets also grow. They get higher. Like some of them, they are a little juicier. I know we were on the Joe Burrow 1.5 touchdowns against the Packers. That was up to minus 140. And sometimes you're going to have to pay the juice on player props, but the market moves quicker. And the reason why it moves quicker is because there's a lot less of a handle on player props than what there is on a regular game. So there's a lot more liability for a casino on player props, and they have to hang player props for every single player. So you got to imagine the amount of props they're hanging compared to one game and the amount of liability they have on player props. So the better you get, the more opportunity there is in player props. Zach?
Yeah, absolutely. These lines change a lot quicker, like you just said, because there's not a lot of action pouring in. So whereas a game, you have, just say hundreds of thousands of people betting on each side. A player prop, somebody goes and puts a big bet down on it, and it moves the line instantly and fast. Yes, player props. There's a ton of opportunity in player props if you're looking at it early, and you really want to look at matchups, especially like in the NFL, like for receiving, if the other team's got a safety or a defensive back out. There's a ton of opportunity. I don't do a lot of player props. I know Tyler does a lot more than I do. So, and he did a pretty good segment there on it. So I don't really have any more than that, but like Tyler said, get in early and get the best available lines you can on them.
Yeah, I agree. You guys covered it well. Always looking at good player props. I rely on Line Movers Network for a lot of my player prop plays. And, one thing I will say too, if you're playing multiple apps, there's always, comparing the props on different apps the other night. I was on both sides of a player prop at plus money. So there's always things like that out there, or if you're comparing them from app to app, you can find obviously win-win situations.
Yeah. And I guess the last thing on player props is you can also get them in game sometimes. So if you see a cornerback getting injured, you can go grab a receiver to get some yardage that hasn't caught a ball yet. I know Chase Claypool the other night had like 10 yards at halftime, ended up with like 100, ended up with like 70 some, and his over under was 33. So There's in-game opportunity on player props too, but get the best number. When a sports book hangs 8.5, they hung it for a reason. Okay, they didn't hang an 8.5 for you to bet the under at 10.5. Or they, you know what I mean? They didn't hang the 10.5 for you to bet the over at 10.5. They hung it at 8.5 for a reason. That's where they wanted the market. That's where they thought they'd get the most action. And you're most likely going to be on the wrong side once it's bet up. It's kind of the same thing with an over and under. You see it in numbers. Oh, if I would have got that earlier, if I would have bought a point or two, I wouldn't have lost that game. But keep that in mind with player props, because the market is usually more intelligent than what we are. And that's all I'll say about that. So again, guys, video picks have been doing great. We hope that you've been listening. We did well last week again. Westgate picks went 3-2. We unfortunately did not get into the 3-week prize. Moving along, we're going to keep it going. Hope we can get into the next 3-week prize. You can check us out on the website, thelinemovers.net. You can listen to some college football podcasts on our YouTube channel, the Line Movers Network. You can listen to me on the Iowa Wise Guys podcast with Nick, discussing college football. Zach's back with some NBA action. We got tennis this week. Everything's going on. Follow us on Twitter. Check us out on the website. Any questions, feel free to contact us and reach out. And we'll be back next week for week 8 of the NFL.
Yep, one of the best times of the year to be a sports gambler. A lot of things going on. So enjoy, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys.
This video was brought to you by River Donkeys Poker Club, but not in association with the Line Movers Network. Start playing today by downloading the app on Google Play or the Apple iTunes Store by searching for Poker, 4 R's with the number 2. Search for the group 5AZR7 to start playing poker today.